I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf video surf forecast for the week starting Sunday, February 9th. Tonight we'll be discussing jet stream level winds, surface level pressure, significant wave heights, and all the things that go into making surf in the North Pacific Ocean. Let's get to work. Looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, we see a not very active pattern. A gale trying to organize off the Kuril Islands is generating 30-foot seas, but they're all aimed north at the Aleutian Islands. And some sort of a cutoff low is circulating north of Hawaii, producing winds in pretty not great conditions, and seas in the 18-foot range, but not doing a whole lot. Then off of California, strong north winds are generating 15, 16-foot seas, something like that. But it's just a windy, blown-out mess. All right, let's get into the details. As usual, we'll start looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough that is a dip in the jet, just like right here. Okay, and that helps create a counterclockwise flow aloft and also down at the ocean surface. That is the hallmark of low pressure in the northern hemisphere. And of course, low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates wind. Winds, if they're strong enough, generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, eventually turn into swell. And swell, when it hits your beach, turns into surf. All right, so we have a trough. We actually have a pretty good-looking pattern here in the West Pacific with 200 knot winds pushing off of southern Japan, pretty far to the south. The issue is they don't go very far. They barely make it to the date line, and then they weaken rapidly, and the jet splits with the northern branch hugging the Alaskan coast, and then pushing down the U.S. West Coast, moving inland over, it looks like Baja here, and then the southern branch goes over Hawaii, making a mess of things, and then also joins the main flow pushing into Baja. So when you get a split flow like this, as we've talked about before, you get high pressure, and of course high pressure generates those north winds that we're experiencing in California right now. So all the action is pretty much from the date line and points west of there as of right now. Let's put this into motion. As you see, we get into Monday. The trough, the apex of the trough, its lowest point, is still pretty much just off these are the Kuril Islands right here, just off the Kuril Islands. And we'll keep going. Continues, all right, the apex moves out by Tuesday night, moving out in a better position in the ocean, but winds are dropping off. There's not really as big of a trough anymore. The split holds in the east, just not a great pattern. Then we get into Wednesday. Trough still there, but the winds even weaker feeding it. It's really these winds coming down this side of the trough that you want. That's what, so if your circulation is counterclockwise, it's this southwest quadrant of the storm over here. That's where all the fetch comes from that produces swell that aims at Hawaii or the U.S. West Coast. All right, but still, the trough continues over the Pacific, the northwestern Pacific Ocean Wednesday night, and then by Thursday night, things just kind of fade out. But the interesting part here, notice, the split disappears, and the jet almost looks like it's consolidating. And that continues. In fact, the jet focuses on the Pacific Northwest come Saturday, where prior they were pretty much high and dry. A week from now, it looks like it's going to be a much wetter pattern up that way, and we'll just put this into motion. The split is still gone as we get into Sunday, and there we are, 180 hours out. Yeah, I guess you got a little bit of a split here, but the flow much more consolidated, if you will, but not very energetic, and literally no support for gale development, no real troughs forecast. So upper level wise, things not looking so great. Let's go take a look down at the ocean surface and see if we can figure out what's going on. So here we are, surface level pressure, surface level winds as expected. Low pressure here in the western Pacific, over the western Pacific. South winds 50 knots, aim to the north, but no real fetch wrapping around the low into its southwestern quadrant, not generating probably any seas of interest. Cutoff low north of Hawaii, generating 30-knot winds aimed at the islands, making for wind swell there. And here's our high pressure. 1040 millibar high. That's very strong. Trying to push into the Pacific Northwest. It's generating the flow here down the California coast, 20-25 knots as of Sunday evening, maybe even more. Okay, so we'll just put this into motion. Where are we come Monday? The low continues circulating just off Kamchatka right there, 45 knot winds, but very small in coverage. And the high tries to work its way. Basically, no change. We're not even going to get into the details because there's just not a whole lot going on. Tuesday, winds settle down along the California coast. The low starts fading out off Kamchatka, 35-knot winds. Now, this is new. A new little tiny gale is forecast forming Tuesday night over we'll call it the dateline, 45-knot winds. Forecast developing, building up to 55 knots. This is new as of Wednesday. We'll call it Wednesday morning. 50-knot winds in the evening, and then lifting north over the dateline region, continuing into Thursday and Friday. If this were to materialize, this would actually give us some hope. We've been watching every run of the model, haven't seen anything, but all of a sudden, this evening's 18Z or the 18Z run now looking like at least there's some hope. Now we're into, where are we? Saturday. Still nothing yet. Let's just run this out. Little bit of something trying to organize. Now remember, the jet's sort of running due east, somewhere around this region. It looks like a series of gales, maybe forecast developing. Much better pattern, perhaps, if this were to be the case. So there is some hope. Let's go take a look at the wave models. See if we can figure out what's going to happen there. So we're going to look back in time to Tuesday because a small gale developed off the Kuril Islands. It built with, what is that, almost 40, we'll say 39-foot seas at 45 north, 170 east, pushing over the dateline on Wednesday night into Thursday, and then fading. Swell from this system is hitting California now. It peaked in Hawaii on Saturday, I believe. Then another small system developed right behind that in the same area. Remember, the jet's been coming off and then doing this split thing like here. So this has been the focus of activity. And this system on Friday got 36, 37-foot seas, and continued, then faded some into Saturday, and it was pretty much gone. So there's swell from that system moving towards Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast as well. Nothing huge, but something. And so we'll get to where we are right there. All right. Now going forward, we see this gale we know is not really going to do a whole lot here in the West Pacific. Yeah, a little bit, small area was at 34, 35-foot seas, but it's not really aimed at Hawaii at all. Here's the local situation over Hawaii. It is pretty much looking to be just a wind-blown weird mess. Now here comes this new low that's supposed to develop on Wednesday. Let's see what it does seas-wise. 34 foot. Oh, building to 42 feet on Wednesday night and continuing into Thursday morning at 43 feet. Interesting. Now, most of this energy more aimed up this direction. Let's go back and just take a quick look here. But still, small swell, if this were to materialize, certainly for Hawaii and for the U.S. West Coast. And then the system fades out as we get into Friday. But still, swell possible. If you believe the models. We literally have one run of the models forecasting this and nothing prior to that. So we're not holding our breath. We're in now. We're going 180 hours out, and 1, 2, 3. Now, none of these are even remotely believable, but the hint or the idea here is that with the jet stream sort of repairing its split, becoming more normally aligned, that maybe we'll start developing a storm track north of the jet stream. and precipitation pushing into at least the Pacific Northwest. If it gets energetic enough, maybe it'll push down into California. So let's take a look at the wind forecast, see what's supposed to be going on. Now, the main two components here are this high pressure, 1040 millibar high off the Pacific Northwest as of 18Z Sunday, and this cutoff low north of Hawaii that has just been generating nonstop north and northwest winds over the islands. So let's put this into motion. We're just going to go the whole way out to Monday morning. North winds continue along most of the California coast north of Point Conception, and you see the north wind machine just ramps up again for Hawaii. 20, 25, not even 30 knot north winds into Kauai. That doesn't bode well. As we get into Tuesday, things are looking better for California. The high pressure moving inland, weakening. The core of the low is still over Hawaii. North winds, pretty much just a mess. Get into Wednesday, still high pressure over Northern California, 20, 25 knot winds, but not so bad south of, let's say, Point Reyes. Winds still north, but almost looking like they're trying to turn to trades here for some of the Hawaiian Islands as we get into Wednesday. And there you go. It looks like the north wind machine is over by Wednesday evening, and it's a now, they're not really trades because it's really driven by this low, the last little bits of the low here, and high pressure here. But east winds are better than north winds any day of the week. Okay, get into Thursday, and what do we have? California, not so bad. Yeah, a little bit of north winds, but not just torn to pieces. Stronger trades building in, driven by this high pressure, clockwise flow around the high pressure. We'll say 20 knot winds for Maui, that area. But as you get up into Kauai, much less velocity. Friday, north wind machine ramps up for California again as the high moves closer to the coast. 30 knot north winds, trades for the Hawaiian Islands. Saturday, almost a week out. The good news is the winds back off some. Trade still, relative to California, trade still pretty solid for the Hawaiian Islands. And then Sunday, where are we? We are light northwest flow for most of California other than the Point Conception area. Let's say Big Sur down to Point Conception. Strong trades back for the Hawaiian Islands. I mean, that has been the issue this entire year is there might be swell, but you just cannot get away from the wind. And most of the time, the wind is driven by strong high pressure, just like that. Nuking trades, strong north winds along California coast, and that's the way it is. I mean, this is typical of like a La Nina kind of year, because during La Nina years, you get an enhancement of the Eastern Pacific or Northeastern Pacific high pressure system, and it just makes the trades. It knocks the rain potential down, makes for north winds and upwelling along the California coast. And this is pretty much what it's been all year, though clearly we're not in La Nina, but it certainly smells like it. All right, let's go take a look at precipitation potential for the U.S. West Coast. All right, Sunday evening, no precip other than Southern California, a little bit there. And that's supposed to hold into maybe Monday morning, but no snow. And we're just looking here at California. You can see the rain for Hawaii associated with the low. We'll sort of keep our eyes on both. Nothing in California. I mean, we're just clicking through this. We're into Thursday. And then notice system. Is this the first system? Let's go back and do a quick look. But I think, yes, that is the first significant system. Okay, here we go. We'll put this back into motion. Here we are. Thursday, the first significant precip event for the Pacific Northwest starts moving in, dropping out of the Gulf of Alaska. We're talking Whistler and into Washington and even down to Cape Mendocino. Hooray, finally some precip for California, but probably no further. And the interior, into Idaho and that region, Montana. That one fades out as we get, and really the line again is between Oregon and Northern California, as it's been all year. Next system focused on Saturday, doing pretty much the exact same thing. Maybe a taste of snow down as far as Tahoe, if you believe the model. But again, most of it all focused up in that region. And then where are we here? And then another one behind that at 180 hours out. All right, let's go take a quick look at snow models. All right, we think we have a pretty good handle on what's going on. Basically, nothing, a little dribble. We're looking up in this regions for snow. Little dribble on like Monday, Tuesday. But then finally, Thursday, the first event starts, making it, right down to, what is this, the 42 north latitude line. We'll watch that just sort of build all into over here is Jackson Hole. You get the general idea. And then down into Colorado and Utah, just like there's a bubble right here, and everything's flowing over it and down and missing California and portions of Nevada. The next one in Saturday, looking even stronger for the same target. And then Sunday, Monday, another one. And then yet another beyond that on Tuesday, all following the same general track. So this is a 10-hour model, so you get the general idea. You see where the pattern is. Snow dashboard for Squaw. What is that, an inch? Nothing. Quite warm. This is the bottom of Squaw, top of Squaw. If it's red, it's above freezing. So there's a little dip there, but just it's all smells of high pressure and winds. It doesn't even matter if there's no snow. Kirkwood, it's the exact same picture. We're not even going to get into the details. And Mammoth, even less. A trace, maybe a half an inch, something like that. So no hope there. But we go to Whistler. Yes, they have snow, or at least forecast to have snow. What is that, about 40, 42 inches of accumulation over the next 10 days. Here's the bottom of Whistler. Here's the top. Snow the whole way to the base for the most part. Winds, not horrible until you get late into the 10-day period. Jackson Hole, of course, well inland, getting less, but still 21 inches or so. And, of course, nice and cold the whole way to the bottom of the mountain. Not a bad call there either. Winds, pretty light, not bad. Okay, so you get the idea. If you're going skiing, go north. Or, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, up in there, British Columbia. But for right now, California, pretty much high and dry. All right, let's take a look long term. What's going on with the Madden-Julian Oscillation and El Nino or La Nina? Probably more La Nina, but let's find out. So we like to start off looking at winds in what we call the Kelvin wave generation area. This is the West Pacific. All right, now this chart, the normal chart we look at, is not available this evening. There's something going on with the buoy array website, TAO buoy array. So we're going right to the model, but it gives us a pretty good idea what's going on. All right, so this is the whole planet on one chart. The West Pacific starts about here on this chart, and it goes the whole way over to the East Pacific, which is here. But it's the West Pacific, specifically from 135 east to 170 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. That's what we call the Kelvin wave generation area. That is when the active phase of the MJO is moving over the West Pacific. It can create west anomalies, and west anomalies, that is like west winds. And those west winds can take warm water that's typically over in the West Pacific, push it to the east in the form of a Kelvin wave. And if you get enough Kelvin waves, it takes like 3 months for a single Kelvin wave to make it across the Pacific. But if you get multiple successive Kelvin waves, that can be the start of El Nino. Now, we don't see that happening, and we're not expecting that to happen. But we can use this chart to sort of tease out what's going on in the Kelvin wave generation area. All right, so the area we're interested in is going straight up the chart from there to about here. Right about there. So here is the current situation. Now notice, back in January, the reds, purples, that is westerly anomalies, if not out-and-out west winds. This was the active phase of the MJO, and if you remember, all of January was pretty much soaked with swell, and there was some snow as well, but mainly it was the active phase of the MJO feeding energy into the jet stream, and that in turn feeding the storm track. And if you have storms, then you have surf. All right, and then we got towards the end of the January, the bottom kind of fell out, the MJO weekend. We actually, I believe, are in the inactive phase right now, but here we go. On February 9th, Yeah, you see the yellows, just weak west anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area. Nothing, and even almost some easterly anomalies in the far western Kelvin wave generation area. But as we get deeper into February, you get this sense here of building westerly anomalies, and almost looks like, well, is that maybe the active phase of the MJO trying to return? Well, we kind of suspect maybe that's the case, because remember, the jet stream was just a mess. It was a mess all last week, and it's forecast to be a mess till Thursday or so, which would be out about in here. And then as these westerly anomalies start building, the jet stream theoretically is supposed to respond to that and all of a sudden start consolidating and not being split and being more favorable for storm production. So maybe, just maybe, we're heading in the right direction. Let's look at another model. This is outgoing long wave radiation, fancy words for sunlight reflectivity off the ocean surface. The less sunlight reflectivity you have, the more clouds you have. The more clouds you have, well, that must mean low pressure, and that is the active phase of the MJO. This is the statistic model. The blues showing negative anomalies, lots of cloud cover, meaning the active phase of the MJO, and here we are today. It looks like the active phase is building in the West Pacific. Here's our inactive phase moving east and eventually out of the picture. And for the next 5, 10, 15 days, active phase forecast building per the statistic model in the Kelvin wave generation area. That's exactly what we want to see. The GEFS model basically saying the exact same thing. Kelvin active phase building in the West Pacific, filling the Kelvin wave generation area for the next 2 weeks. So this is looking favorable. Phase diagram charts, another way of looking at the MJO, the active phase specifically. So what are we doing? Look, this circle here, assume this is like the North Pole, and you're looking down on the North Pole of our planet. And the active phase moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent, over the West Pacific, over the East Pacific, under the United States, just on the equator, across the Atlantic, over North Africa, and back to the Indian Ocean. So if the active phase is here, the inactive phase is typically on the other side of the planet. The heavy dot is where the active phase is, so it's in the maritime continent, or over the maritime continent. The further away from this circle, the stronger it is. So out here is strong territory, in here is non-existent. So we'll call it weak to modest active phase of the MJO over the maritime continent. 3 different ensemble runs here. One says it's supposed to collapse over the maritime continent. 2 others say weakly moving into the West Pacific. The GEFS model starting out the same thing, saying effectively the same thing for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. And then the active phase builds and builds and builds, and 2 weeks from now is supposed to be moderate to almost strong over the West Pacific. In other words, saying there is a big fat sweet spot somewhere in the, we'll call it 10 days to 2 to maybe 3 weeks from now, when the storm machine could ramp up pretty solidly, if you believe the GEFS model. If you believe the statistic model, then it's just a ho-hum, nothing's going to happen. We don't know how this is going to play out, but we'll keep digging here in the models. Maybe we can get some clues. Upper level model, jet stream level model. Okay, basically they use this to determine potential for precipitation, but that is consistent with the MJO. Greens are areas favorable for precipitation, and one would assume that is the active phase of the MJO. So we'll call this, and let's look here. This is the equator, right? Just get you oriented here. South America, Central America, New Guinea there, Australia. Okay, and there's multiple panes of the same thing. So you see active phase, and this runs about a week ahead of what's down at the surface, and this, we believe, is a statistic model, so probably not the more favorable of them. Anyway, active phase over the Kelvin wave generation area, slowly pushing its way into Central America by, we'll say the 5th of March, but probably a week behind that, even maybe the So the 12th of March, something like that. And then the inactive phase develops in end of February, we'll say, and pushes its way across the Pacific into the 20th of March. But at that time, a weak active phase is again supposed to set up over the far West Pacific. So let's see what the CFS model says. Yet another one. I don't know whether this is I think it's more dynamic than it is statistical. All right, so where are we? This is whole planet on one chart. Kelvin wave generation area starts here and goes to about here. Here is today where we're at. The oranges and reds are, in this situation right in here, weak westerly anomalies. The dotted contour is the inactive phase of the MJO. So the inactive phase of the MJO started about the end of January. It's over the date line today. Supposed to be moving to, we'll call it the East Pacific, and fading on about February 20th, something like that. Now, here is the active phase of the MJO. It's not even the active phase yet, but you see westerly anomalies associated with it getting pretty strong as we get a week from now, and then rebuilding again late in February. This solid contour is the active phase of the MJO, moving through the Kelvin wave generation area into at least the first week in March. So if there was a sweet spot for storm development, we'll say end of February into maybe the second week in March, something like that. Also notice westerly anomalies forecast pushing into the west coast. If there was a window for the precip potential for California, it would be here, later part of February, at least into first week of March, if not beyond that. And then the long-term run of the CFS model. Same deal, whole planet on one chart, Kelvin wave generation area between here and here, going the whole way up the chart. But this is past performance here, and this is the forecast up here. And we're using so we've done this before in the past. There is the sort of the average of all four members, but we're going to just pick the most recent one because we think that's probably, so this is the oldest going to the newest run of the model. We want the newest run, we think. And it's suggesting, as you can plainly see, building westerly anomalies in the core of the Kelvin wave generation area. Here is January's pulse for perspective. We see longer, maybe not quite as strong, but a longer duration of westerly anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area starting as early as, we'll say, February 16th. And going the whole way through to the end of March. So 6 weeks, possibly. Now, this model updates every day and things change, but this is looking pretty good. Let's overlay the MJO. Okay, so we have westerly anomalies forecast. In fact, according to this model, the active phase of the MJO is fading today. Here's our inactive phase, and you can we'll connect the dots here and say that's where it is. So it's starting, we'll say right now, it's supposed to go through February 17th. But westerly anomalies continue in the Kelvin wave generation area, suggesting, well, maybe it's the inactive phase, but maybe the jet stream will just sort of ignore that that's even happening. Either way, once you get into February 20th or so, things are supposed to wake up. Active phase, the MJO in control until about March 20th, something like that. Then here's our inactive phase. Now this one, not looking as strong as it did when we were looking maybe a day or two or three ago, but notice easterly anomalies pushing through the Kelvin wave generation area. And then as you get into April 7th or so, another active phase of the MJO sets up with westerly anomalies, but by April, you're out of the core of winter, you're into springtime, who knows where we're going to be at. All right, so let's do the low-pass filter. So this is your low-pressure. Solid contour is the equivalent of a low-pressure bias on the date line. This is interesting. So 1, 2, 3 contours supposedly right now, just barely, and holding for the foreseeable future. It was interesting when we were updating our text forecast yesterday. This second contour was supposed to die like somewhere right around in here. Now it's back in the picture, looking pretty solid, We'll take it. Every day it's something new. You never know. All right, so the dotted contour here, a high pressure bias in the Indian Ocean. It's been there all year. The drought, the fires in Australia, attributable to this, we believe, and forecast to continue for the foreseeable future. Now, we had seen, see the blues, that is easterly anomalies. We had seen yesterday that the blues, the easterly anomalies, were going to be in sync with this inactive phase of the MJO, traverse the Pacific and be gone, and then this guy might almost collapse. But now the model's changed on that. So again, though, we're looking 2.5 months, almost 3 months out. Never believe a model. But the way things are right now, we're getting the best possible hope we could, and the big bullseye looks like in the late February into late March time frame for swell production, probably the last big push for the North Pacific. So clear your calendars if you can. All right, so let's go longer term. We're done talking with the MJO. Let's go see what's going on with El Nino, La Nina. Where are we at on that? Though we think we know, and I think you probably know as well. All right, TAO buoy array data. West Pacific here, East Pacific here. These are the anchor lines on the buoys themselves, strung the whole way across the equator and across the width of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles. The X's are the sensors on those anchor lines. They capture data, report it up via satellite to a central processing facility that then uses a model to fill in the gaps and build a profile of what the temperatures look like subsurface, down 100 meters, down 150 meters. All right, 30-degree isotherm, 30 degrees centigrade. That is, was it 1.8? 30 times 1.8 plus 32 degrees gets you Fahrenheit. All right, the cutoff line here is at 70, what is that, 76. It actually went west. I thought it was at 73 yesterday. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That is 73, right. Looking backwards. 73, all right, at 173 east. The 29-degree isotherm at 71. It's actually 71 west. It's moved east a little bit. The 28-degree isotherm at about 162 west. That's about where it's been for the past couple of days. Brick wall right there. And then the 24-degree isotherm, solid, actually thickening, pushing into Ecuador. So what this means is warm water is pretty healthy in the West Pacific. Some of it appears to be moving off to the east. Let's go look at anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. Big ball of warm water, almost 4 degrees centigrade above normal under the dateline. This is Kelvin wave number 6, I believe. Holding solid. It's not moving too much. I think, where is this? This is, yeah, that's 140, so this is about 138 west. It hadn't moved a whole lot, maybe even in the past week. Now, there's remnants of another Kelvin wave pushing into Ecuador, 2 degrees centigrade above normal, and basically warm water over the whole subsurface equatorial Pacific. So clearly no signs of La Nina. And if you didn't know what you're looking at, you'd almost go, well, this looks like El Nino, but there's more. So El Nino is not just one thing. It's multiple, like subsurface temperatures, surface pressures, surface winds. So we're going to look at some of those over the next couple of minutes. A different model showing the same, using the same raw data. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3.5 degrees in this one little pocket here, and then probably warmer in the 4 to 5 degree range here off of Ecuador. So one Kelvin wave here, another one pushing inland. The Kelvin wave corridor is wide open, and there is warm water flowing through it. Clearly not a La Nina pattern. If it was, you'd have cold water all down here. You see this little bit here, but that's pretty normal. But it's from 150 meters up that really matters, and the balance is clearly towards warming. Sea level anomalies, JSON 3 satellite data, strip out all the wind waves, strip out the waves, strip out the tides, and we see a bump, and it's on the equator that we're interested in. A bump on the ocean surface, 5 centimeters, 0 to 5 centimeters from Ecuador the whole way over the dateline into the West Pacific. So what that means is warm water at depth, it expands. If it expands, it pushes the water above it up a little bit, creates a little bump on the ocean surface. That's what we have. So this is sort of a indirect satellite confirmation that there is warm water, as we saw on the previous charts. Upper ocean heat anomaly, called a histogram, history. So here is the West Pacific, over here is the East Pacific, and you can see the reds are warmer than normal water temperatures, and you can see them back in, what is that, March of 2019, Kelvin wave, was it number 3, moving from west to east, driven by the active phase of the MJO. West winds, west anomalies take warm water here, push it off to the east, impacted the Central American coast in the May-June timeframe. 2 stalled Kelvin waves, never made it past the dateline, not much momentum to them. Cool anomalies actually off of all of Central America, all during the summer months. We thought we were in La Nina, and then September, another Kelvin wave started organizing and had enough momentum, pretty much wiped out the cool anomalies and impacted Central America in the December-January time frame. Now here's Kelvin wave number 6. Notice it's not moving. It's sort of stalled like these two were. And we know there's some cool water hanging around off here, and have been, and we've been debating the meaning of that cool water, but clearly any cool water we think has an effect on precip levels in California when that cool water is in the East Equatorial Pacific. More on that in a second. All right, sea surface, not subsurface, surface temperature anomalies. That's what really matters. And this is interesting. I mean, things are evolving rather quickly in the East Pacific. So that is Peru. Chile's down there. Ecuador right there. Central America. You see that? You see warm water all here. This is from the eruption of the Kelvin wave, whatever it was, number 5. And so that warm water comes under the equator, down, and then eventually hits land over here, erupts on the surface, and then starts spreading north and south, and trades eventually are supposed to carry it off to the west. Now I see we have good warming off of Peru, right near shore, still upwelling, but off the coast, pretty darn warm. Off of Ecuador, warm, and all off of Central America. Now, there was this cool patch right down in here that we've been watching, and that was the cool area all summer long we've been looking at, going, that's really stomping on precip in California, and it was making things look like La Nina. Now we're seeing a different patch. This one's filling in, and a new one's developing right on the equator south of Hawaii. So, not sure how that's playing out, but either way, that doesn't look like El Nino. That looks like La Nina. But typically, you'd want to see it starting in here. So it could just be we're in this sort of neutral thing where it kind of wants to go it goes towards La Nina during the inactive phase. And then the active phase wakes up and warm water starts moving around. And then it kind of looks more like El Nino. But neither of them are over the threshold to declare La Nina or El Nino. So it's just sort of a neutral pattern. And, we're doing this every week. We're watching it very close. But the reality is, El Nino, La Nina is on time scales of months, not days or weeks. All right, the trend for the past 7 days. Well, we have warming, as expected, in all the places where there is warm water. Now here is where that cool pocket was, and we're not really seeing any obvious cooling in that area, just sort of a neutral kind of temperature pattern. So overall, no clear signs of strong warming, but no clear signs of strong cooling either, just sort of hanging where it is. And then the overview, sea surface temperature anomalies. All right, so here's our warming off of Peru. Here's our warming off of Central America. Here's that patch of cool anomalies that we've been watching all summer. It's still there. It hasn't given up the ghost. Here's that new little patch that's developing on the equator. My guess is that is short-lived, associated with, well, what do we got? High pressure. We know we have nuking high pressure somewhere up in here. Maybe that's driving it. Who knows? It could be any of a number of factors, but let's see if it hangs around for a couple of weeks. My guess is with the developing active phase of the MJO, at some point, it's probably just strong easterly anomalies here causing temporary upwelling, and that'll all be gone. This is a different factor. We believe there's typically a high pressure system off of California, and it fades in winter months. And there's a high pressure system, it rotates that way, off of Central America, either side of the equator. And this one has been active all summer long and into this winter, causing upwelling. And that is what we think has been stomping on the precip coming into California. Cool water in the East Pacific basically helps to split the jet stream. It steals energy from the jet stream, where warm water, if you had El Nino here, the jet would just be raging in. So that's what we think is going on. Let's take a quick look at the Southern Oscillation Index. So we talked about subsurface water temperatures, surface water temperatures. Now we're looking up in the atmosphere above the Pacific and seeing what the atmosphere thinks is going on. This is Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. When there's low pressure over Tahiti, the index goes negative. Today's value, 3.03, and just sort of looking back, we had, basically it's been, so kind of a mixed bag. Neither strong negative nor strong positive in terms of a trend, in terms of, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time in one direction or the other. 30-day average sort of strips out all the noise. Current value minus 1.62, so just barely on the El Nino's side of neutral. And how has it been? Well, look where we were a month ago, minus 5.87. So the trend, looking at this, is from a El Nino, weekly biased El Nino towards neutral as of right now. The 90-day average, minus 4.30. Well, that's more in the El Nino territory. And where were we a month ago? Minus 5.52. So it's just basically been noodling around, very weakly, not indicating El Nino, but in, towards that range. Certainly not La Nina. And then finally, the sea surface temperature forecast for the Nino 3.4 region. That's the official El Nino monitoring region. It's out in the middle of the equatorial Pacific. All right, so last year, about this time, we were, according to this, 3/4 of a degree above normal. That was all that, like, we were in weak El Nino territory. And then we got into this summer, temperatures dipped because of, we think, that high pressure thing that's going on off of Peru. We went negative, slightly 1/4 of a degree. And then supposedly in October we went positive. And as of right now, where are we? We're supposedly at 0.7, 3/4 of a degree above normal. Let's go take a look real quick. Well, here's the temperature trend per the Nino 3.4 region. You can see where we've been pretty much all since mid-November. So hovering, 0.2 of a degree, 0.4 of a degree, hovering right around, just barely warmer than neutral. Today's value, 0.283, 1/4 of a degree above normal. And what that other model say we should be at 3/4 of a degree. So this is definitely biased on the high side. Now here's the scary part. We're supposed to be good till, end of March or so. Then temperatures are really supposed to drop off for this model. Neutral by May 1st, and then heading well down to minus 1.5 degrees below normal. That's full on La Nina territory by next fall. So this is one model. The consensus model, at least as of January, of like 15 plus different models, none of them paint this picture. They all say hovering around neutral. Warmer than neutral right now, moving to neutral. but it's going to be interesting to see what the February update says of the consensus model when that comes out. We're keeping our eyes on it because we are interested, because this is a little bit concerning. We do not want to go into La Nina, especially. So precipitation in California right now is at like 50% of normal, including, whether it's measurable, rainfall or snow equivalent. I mean, there's a pretty good base of snow up in the Sierra, but it's kind of a dry base. It's not really wet. And the thought is there's not as much precip in there as, like half to 3/4 of what there should be for this time of year. We'll see. Maybe with some miracle will happen, we'll get all kinds of snow. But, I mean, the general trend has been drier than normal. It feels like we're in La Nina. The nuking north winds, the bulletproof high pressure that's been here all season, the massively split jet stream, stronger than normal trades in Hawaii. These are all classic signs of some sort of La Nina pattern. So the typical time frame, though, when you really, like if you're going to get into a strong El Nino, come February, March is when you start seeing signs of that. If it's a strong one, if it's a weaker one, it's not till May, June, July time frame. Right now, we're not seeing anything that screams La Nina. I mean, water temperatures are normal. Yeah, we have the high pressure thing going on, but the actual absolute measures of water temperatures and things like that in the Nina 3.4 region do not claim La Nina at all, though it still feels very much like La Nina. So, the short of it is, we don't know where we're going. We got one model that says La Nina next year. We have a whole bunch of other models. They're older. This is updating almost daily. The others, only once a month, are saying neutral. But we have our suspicions that maybe, just given what's sort of going on in the atmosphere, what's going on in the ocean, that maybe we're due for some sort of La Nina-ish pattern next year. But hopefully not. It's just really too early to tell. So for right now, not a whole lot of surf forecast. High pressure sort of in control, driven by the inactive phase of the MJO. Good news is active phase is supposed to set up starting, we'll say about the latter part of February, maybe the end of the third week of February, and go into middle to late March. That's the big red X when there should be surf in the Pacific Ocean. Make the most of it. After that, we suspect things are going to decidedly turn downward and windier and upwelling and cold and all those sort of not good things that happen during a year that's sort of like what this is. Beyond that, unknown, as we were just saying. Are we going to La Nina, or are we going to stay in hopefully at least a neutral pattern? We'll say, it's too early to know. We can't say. So make the most of what you can get now and enjoy it while you have it, because you might not have it later. All right. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, you're welcome to subscribe right down there on the right. There's an option to subscribe. Click the bell. You'll get notified when we update the videos. And if you don't want to do that, you're always welcome to just go to stormsurf.com. That's the website where a lot of this data is coming from. And you can follow along there. And we also post up in the top part, there's a banner that says when we update the video. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll do it again next week. Same time, same channel.